WJR.
Now, here's Lloyd Jackson.
And welcome back at 7:36. This is the Ask the Chief program. This is the part of the big story where we talk to Detroit Police Chief Ella Bully-Cummings and get your questions answered at 800-859-0WJR, 800-859-0957. AT has been waiting patiently, and AT has a question for the Chief.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, AT.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm great. You got a question for the Chief?
Yes, I have a question for the Chief. Hi, Chief.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, ma'am, and you?
Okay, thank you.
Great. Listen, I am, I live in the community. I live here in the northwest side of the city. And, I don't know the way the city police are trained. I mean, I keep my hat off for the men and women who serve this community. But as an immigrant, I find them to be somewhat antagonistic. When I call them and they show up, as soon as they hear my accent, it seems like they treat me differently. Okay, and I don't have the response as a citizen of this city, that I need from the police. I've seen that on several occasions. I don't know if this is a complaint that you have received from other foreigners in this community, but I would like to know how we could address that and let the police in Detroit understand that though we are foreigners, we are part of this community and we are here to help build this community.
You're absolutely right, AT. You're a citizen of this city, and every citizen is entitled to respect and professionalism from our officers. What I will tell you is, yes, it's very important to me because one of the things that we're doing in training and have done, but I want us to focus more on it, is cultural diversity and sensitivity training, because I think what that does is it helps us to understand the various cultures, and it just reemphasizes the importance of treating people with respect, regardless as to whether or not you have an accent or not.
We have so many cultures here in the city of Detroit.
We do. Detroit is so diverse, and so you're going to encounter people in every area in the city of Detroit that may have an accent or not from here. And, that's why it's really important to have the cultural diversity and sensitivity training. We've been doing it, but I want us to focus in on it a little bit more because of complaints like you have, AT. Now, what I will tell you is that you can make your complaint with the Office of the Chief Investigator. I do want you to know that, so that when you have this type of encounter, because if we don't begin to address it, if we're not made aware of it, you cannot begin to address it. We need to know. So I would encourage you that if you've got the information, you can contact the Office of the Chief Investigator and file that complaint.
All right, very good. It's the Ask the Chief program on The Big Story, 800-859-0WJR if you have a question for Police Chief Ella Bully-Cummings, 1-800-859-0957. And Chief, let's talk about this. I guess we want to call it a different kind of enforcement that you're doing that will probably help Dorothy, who called and talked about the folks that are in her neighborhood or are causing havoc.
You know what, Lloyd? One of the things that I mentioned that we are hiring. Mayor Kilpatrick included an additional 200 budgeted police officer positions in our budget that City Council approved. But while we get up to speed on that, we have to make sure that we continue to do everything that we can to increase visibility. So what we've done is we've taken a group of officers, and they are in uniform in a marked scout car. We've taken a look at what we consider focus areas or hot spots in the city of Detroit. We've taken a look at the data because we just don't want to deploy people at will.
Right.
We want to make sure that we're attacking the problem, but not only the problem, when it occurs. And so these officers are working 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. because we found that the violent crime that we're seeing occurs during those hours and in certain areas of the city of Detroit. So we're deploying them in full strength to saturate a particular area because of the crime that has occurred, because of the complaints that we've received from our community. So they're in uniform. We want them visible. We don't want undercover officers. We want the visibility, because the first step is always to try and be proactive to deter crime from occurring. And if not, we've got the officers there in a group where they can begin to address the problems. And on this one, I will take back Dorothy's comments, and I do know the area that she mentioned, and we'll make sure that they saturate that area.
Now, and will these officers still be hooked up to 911 if somebody calls?
No.
Or they will be separate?
No, we put this operation together to allow these officers to engage in crime fighting.
Okay.
And they are not on the board. They're not responding to calls for service, because when they do that, we take their ability away to investigate crime and to be proactive in patrolling. And so that's what we're doing with this group of officers. I don't want to tell you how many, but it's quite a few officers. And the officers from the district stations are the ones that are still responding to the calls for service.
Chief, I want to ask you, what about... and I know you guys do traffic stops, probably maybe not as much as state police on the freeways, but, a lot of times when people have weapons, they are carrying those weapons in a car.
Right.
So is there anything that the police department is doing to maybe do more traffic stops and maybe get more folks with guns?
Well, you have to be really, really careful with that. You take a look at the reason for traffic enforcement. The first really is education, to get people educated about the traffic laws that occur. That exist.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is in order to get people to obey those traffic laws, and you have to enforce the laws. But the first piece should always be about education. You need to have reasonable suspicion or probable cause to do certain things once that stop occurs.
Okay.
And that's about training. But the focus of traffic enforcement really should be education and making sure that people are safe, both pedestrians and individuals behind the wheel of a car, while they're on the road. But we do realize that guns are moving by people in automobiles. It's going from one location to the next. So, yes, that is a focus of ours,
A person may not have a valid driver's license, and then one thing leads to another.
We see a lot of that. We really do. We see a lot of people driving cars that don't have licenses, whose licenses are suspended. There are people that have never had a driver's license. And so that is a focus of ours. I believe my officers write more tickets than anybody in the state of Michigan, though, Lloyd. I beg to differ with you on that one.
Okay. Well, now, this is another thing, too, Chief, before we get to the phone lines. You guys can go and arrest everyone and arrest people who are doing bad things and all of that, but you have to put some of the blame, so to speak, if everybody wants to point a finger, on the court system, because the courts have to keep them there. And sometimes I know some of your officers have arrested the same person 4 or 5 times.
It's true, Lloyd. Sometimes we look at it and, some of my officers may refer to it as a revolving door. But I think you've got to look at the whole picture. You've got to look at whether or not we even have the ability to house a lot of these criminals, our holding capacity. One of the things that I don't want us doing, I want us going after the real knuckleheads.
Absolutely.
I have told my officers, I don't want you going out here and taking the path of least resistance. I don't need you creating criminal records for these young people. But I want us to go after the true knuckleheads.
Mm-hmm.
I want us to enforce the law. I've told my officers, and the mayor has told them, we are going to take the streets of the city of Detroit back. These belong to us, law enforcement, and we're going to take it back. But, there's a lot of blame to go around, and as the chief of police, I don't have any interest in the blame game. My interest is in getting the bad folks off the streets, being proactive about fighting crime, and, bringing a sense of security to people here in our city. But it's more than just one piece to it. And I think, just taking a look at the state of Michigan's budget and, the program to put the Michigan prisoner reentry program, because they can no longer afford to house that number of prisoners in jail anymore, those that have been convicted for property crimes, they're taking a look at them and putting them out early.
Mm-hmm.
And you will see where people that may have had property crimes in the past, now they're back out, and they may now take it to a whole new level. To
another level, right.
We're seeing, and I'll tell you this, taking a look just at the homicides, over 70% of our victims had a prior record or contact with law enforcement. And that's a pattern and trend that we're seeing across the country.